We wanted to begin too with a land and culture acknowledgement. NCAT works across the continent and acknowledges that we serve people who currently farm and ranch on the traditional lands of many indigenous peoples. We acknowledge that truly regenerative agriculture works to heal social wrongs no less than it works to heal lands and waters. We honor and give thanks for the traditional ecological knowledge and place-based wisdom as the foundation of all regenerative land care. So, we are grateful. I see many faces out there that I'm so excited to have you here and meet some of our staff. I'm going to turn it over to Kara Kroeger, but we have Justin Morris here from Idaho. We have Felicia Bell from Mississippi. You'll be meeting all of us a little later along with our producers, because that's what Soil for Water is all about, is the connection between producers. So thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kara Kroeger. I just want to make sure, can you see my slide for Soil for Water?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Excellent. Excellent. So yes, my name is Kara Kroeger, and I am a sustainable ag specialist with NCAT. And today we are going to be talking a little bit about one of NCAT's programs called Soil for Water. And we're going to be speaking on how to regenerate your soil sponge. So I am accompanied by my colleagues, Linda Poole, Felicia Bell, and I'm not sure if Justin Morris is on the line, but if he is,
yes.
Yes, great. So the four of us are all employees with NCAT, and we are all involved in the Soil for Water project. We are accompanied, let's see if I can get this to shift. Nope, it's not shifting, of course. Let's see here. So I'll keep it in this view for the sake of ease. So we are accompanied by some of our other employees at NCAT who are also Soil for Water representatives around the nation. And Linda Coffey, Hernan Colmenero, Mike Morris is our director, Nina Prater in Arkansas, Lee Reinhardt in Pennsylvania, and Omar Rodriguez in California. So we are all working to promote the Soil for Water program. And just to give a basic overview, Soil for Water started at NCAT in 2015, and our focus is to bring people together to catch and hold more water in the soil. And we're trying to do this by creating a growing and thriving community of regenerative farmers and ranchers all around the nation. We started in Texas, but we've quickly expanded into Colorado, New Mexico, California, Montana, Arkansas, Mississippi, and Virginia. And coming November, we're going to be spreading nationwide. We also provide expert technical assistance with soil and water management. And we are going to be launching in November a regenerative atlas, which is going to feature stories of different producers around the nation who are capturing and holding more water in the soil. And we will offer a forum as well that our members can communicate on and share information and answer questions and get questions answered. And we will be also offering a network platform for members to engage and get to know each other on a deeper level and share information. And we are always offering workshops and different things of that sort. So you can find out more about us at soilforwater.org. Today, we are going to show 4 different videos from 4 different producers. The producers who are here with us are Tamika Bell, who is with the Chocaw Fresh, which is a farm in Mississippi. We also have Janet and Dale Viseth, which are in Malta, Montana, and they have a grass-fed beef operation. We also have Tim Miller, who is a dry land vegetable farmer in Kyle, Texas, which is just south of Austin. And we are also accompanied by Chris Groterget, who is a farmer and livestock producer in Hereford, Texas, in the Panhandle. So without further ado, we will go ahead and get started. And I'm going to, we're going to show 4 videos featuring these producers, and that way you can see what's actually going on their farms and ranches in from the videos that we've made. And then after we see those 4 videos, we're going to open it up to questions from the audience. So when we do get to that place, please feel free to type your question into the chat box and we will go ahead and get that answered when we can.
Oh, I think I just did that wrong. My apologies. You're not going to get to hear this. Here we go. It's my honor to introduce any of you who haven't already met Dale and Janet Vieseth to just a wonderful couple doing some good work in Montana. And I think this video will say it all. So we'll just have it go here.
Part of what we do, it's what ranchers do. Because if you take care of your cattle, they take care of the grass, the range, and that makes it good for deer, birds, every other kind of wildlife. It's a balance, and it's just all family, and it's just how we live out here. We take care of everything.
That's Janet Vieseth, a Vieseth Cattle Company, a 48,000 acre ranch on the prairies of north central Montana. Janet and her husband Dale traditionally run 750 mother cows, 200 breeding heifers, and 250 stocker yearlings. They sell red Angus composite bulls and breeding cows and heifers in an annual spring sale. Their goal? It's to improve soil and water, range, wildlife, and their community while being a profitable business. The Vieseths were honored to receive the 2008 Clarence Birch Award from the Quivira Coalition, and in the same year, NCBA's Region 5 Environmental Stewardship Award. I'm Linda Poole with the National Center for Appropriate Technology and the Soil for Water program, and I hope you'll join me today to listen as Janet and Dale talk with us about the work that they're doing to regenerate their soil sponge.
So here at Vieseth Cattle, we do a lot of winter grazing. We plan pastures that aren't too far from the buildings so that we can also supplement them with protein every couple days, canola pellets, sun meal pellets, different things like that. But ideally, if we get have enough moisture to regrow, because we go through the pastures once early on during the growing season and take about half. It depends on the year and what it is, but we take about half. And then we leave that until we come back later in the year. This is a spot where we had a bale last year. You can see there's a lot more residue. So I'm going to try the compaction tester and see. I just got to get through. And once I get through, it's going way, very good. That's pretty amazing. This is a foot away from where we dug our soil sample before. This is a single ring infiltration test, and we got 6 inches of water in the ground in 2 minutes and 12 seconds. So pretty amazing, and the best I've seen on the ranch. Okay, so we're just beginning with the soil checking, monitoring, and this is a new start for us. Patty Armbruster is helping us and teaching us. We've been to some workshops with Nicole Masters to learn the beginning. We've been doing this kind of monitoring on the line for 10 years on 6 sites, and then we've been doing photo monitoring on other sites for undaunted stewardship, and maybe before, Dale's done those for a very long time on places at the ranch. And it's all part of trying to improve things, and Dale would tell you they've improved a lot over time.
The reason that we look at our monitoring data so hard is we want to determine if our production practices are actually improving our range trend out there and how things are going on the land. And in my lifetime, we've seen tremendous changes in species composition and in ground cover, ground litter. I think we'll see more After years of rotational grazing, we've seen a tremendous increase in warm season species, and those would include prairie sandreed, prairie cordgrass, and little blue stem. When I was a kid, these were very rare to see. And when we come back again on those plants, it will be in the dormant season, so they will only be grazed once in the grazing season. We try to distribute our season of use, and so traditionally, as you go to your winter pastures or your dormant pastures, if we can spread that all over the ranch, that tends to also help our range condition trend. Our cattle are moved from 150 to 185 times a year. A lot of this is done with one person. We go to the gate, we call them, they're used to the rotations. We handle them as close as we can to the ideal of Bud Williams, and our range program wouldn't be possible without good stockmanship. All of the things that we are developing right now is we've changed to bale grazing. That seems to really activate the microbes in the soil and improve soil health, reduces our temperatures on the ground. We will continue to do bale grazing. It kind of depends on the winter how much actual hay that we feed. We try to minimize our stored feed because it's so costly, but where we live 100 miles from the Canadian border, there are about 20% of the winters that we have no choice, that we just have that much snowfall that we have to have stored feeds on hand. I guess the other area that my family has worked on is trying to hold water on the landscape, and I guess that started a long ago with reservoirs for stock water. They also tried to use dikes to spread water over the landscape. We've gone to things like beaver dam analogs, and we use different materials on those. We've used rocks, and we use all our fallen trees on the ranch to trying to improve our floodplain, increase our water holding capacity on the whole ranch, and increase our water tables. We've gone to composting our livestock manure in our confinement operations, and we have also gone to composting our livestock that died. I think management for drought comes down to timing. I don't think those plants in a good wet year, they can probably take that second, maybe that third bite, but in a drought they can't. That plant will die. So I think your timing is very crucial, and I think you also have to be on top of how much biomass you're producing out there. If you need to destock, I'm afraid that would be that's a good decision. We try to keep a good health program on at all times, because usually health is challenged more in drought situations, stress situations. So we try to go in with good, healthy cattle before there ever is a drought. The ranch has a 20-point drought plan, and we go down the list. One of the reasons that we run yearling grass cattle is for a drought relief. In this year, when we started, we knew it was dry. 25% of our AUMs went down the road before the grazing season started, just because we knew we didn't have that grass. I would define success through things like our monitoring program. If we can improve that grazing trend while we are making a sustainable living, that would be my thought, my goal.
For me, to define success is to raise healthy, happy, cooperative cows and calves, and keep the land, the grass, everything healthy, and to keep the people here functioning and working and doing what they need to do. And it's all a balance. And if you overdo one, you're going to feel it somewhere else. So to me, success is being able to do all that and keep family and friends intact, and everything you're responsible for. It's a balance.
I think one of the big benefits of regenerative ag today and the interest in the soil is the interest in the people. When I go to conferences, I see people that are genuinely excited and can't wait to get home and implement some of these practices. And I'm as guilty as anybody. I just as soon build my beaver dam analogs as do anything else.
Soil for Water is about weaving together people, community, soil, and water. And out of that, there's a lot of hope to be found, because there's a lot of different ways to do that. You can hold people together, you can give them a little more space if you need to. You just got to go on. And I think it's helped me just thinking about the yard and the things that I can't get to grow there and fighting the same things. Now I have ways to work on that aren't super expensive, and ways to check and see if I'm gaining. And I'm really just happy to have that option.
So I want to say thanks to Dale and Janet. You can tell how lucky I am to live in the same place that they do. Felicia Bell is going to go next, and she too is very fortunate in the people that she gets to work with. And I'm looking forward to meeting Daphne and Tomika.
Thanks, Linda. Good morning, everyone. I wanted to share this particular video with one of our partners. This is Chocaw Fresh, and we don't have Daphne today because she's on vacation, a well-deserved vacation. So you can start the video, Kara. Thank you.
Yes, I'm Daphne Snow. I've worked with Chocaw Fresh Produce since it started in 2012.
Could you tell us about Chocaw Fresh for as your growing methodology? So you are certified organic,
Yes.
right? Okay. What push the organization and just the people in charge to that methodology of farming?
Well, for one, it opens the doors. We thought in the beginning to a lot more funding if you become certified organic as far as grants. And in central Mississippi, you could be one of a kind because there's not a lot of certified organic farms. At least in 2012 there wasn't. And we wanted to be a standout in the community, and with a lot of the tribal land, it had been farmed conventionally, so we wanted to try methods to be more sustainable and to bring the soil health back versus continuing to just keep farming the way it had always been farmed.
Can you walk us through what do you all do in here to maintain soil health and build soil health in these type of times?
Yes, I was going to give you a little history. These are new construction tunnels. Well, actually, they were moved from a different farm to this location. We'll be doing these totally different than when we started with the original tunnels. When these tunnels were constructed in 2012, we had 5 farm locations, and when they came in, they built the tunnel pads like a house pad. So it was like hard compressed red clay, and that's what we had to work with in the finished product that you'll see today. We started out with actually bringing tractors in. We were disking. We were anything we could do to break that up. And then we started bringing in compost, gypsum, different implements to try to, to get the soil better. And that has taken some of the farms, we are still trying to get that soil to a premium because of the way we had to start. Now, like I said, we used to bring tractors into the tunnels. It was more mechanized than by hand. We have gotten away from that in the past 5 years. We've decided to go no-till or, minimal tillage with a walk-behind tiller, and no tractors are allowed in the tunnels. So these tunnels will start out completely different. So what we'll do is we'll come in, we'll cut all this grass down as low as possible. We'll cover it with a tarp, try to kill the weeds, the seeds, everything that's in there. Then we'll come back in and plant a cover crop to try to still, drown out more of the weed seed. And then after that, we will till that in. We'll come back and start working on permanent rows in these tunnels. And each row, we're hoping to go the length of the tunnel at 30 inches wide, and then have your walk between rows. And on the walking rows, we usually lay down weed cloth to make it a permanent walking row. And then we just, every year and every season, we will build up on that row to make it a permanent, somewhat raised bed row. Adding compost, gypsum, that's our main thing that we use on that. And on these tunnels, like I was saying, we'll have to start out to even make rows in here. Now, on the other tunnels, when we get there, I can show you how we've incorporated the compost into those rows, since that was a little different than how it will be in here.
So, Daphne, if you can explain to us what we're seeing in this tunnel.
Okay, this is our fall planting of greens that we started. We started our own transplants back, a couple of months ago, and so everything in here was started from seed in our greenhouse, and then we transplanted it onto the rows. And this will be our fall winter harvest, and it's collards, turnip greens, kale, Chinese cabbage, radish, beets, and spinach. And that will be, we plant this, we'll have some planted at all 4 farms this year. So hopefully we'll have 11 tunnels planted in greens.
Wow. And I know your system for the new tunnels will be a little bit different using a silage tarp, but what is the soil under this landscape fabric? What is it, the gypsum and the compost, or is anything else utilized?
Yes, now again, these have been started since the tunnel was started probably 7 years ago. So we just kind of gradually built this up with the things you just mentioned. And what we used to do was come in at the end of each season and pull everything out. And then we would come through with more gypsum, more compost, and we would cover the entire row. And then we use a tilter to just till it in the top 2 inches of the soil. And if anybody's purchased compost lately, they know it's a little bit more expensive than it used to be. So for the last year and a half, what we do is, instead of covering the whole row, we come back, and for every hole that we dig it a little bit bigger than the transplant, and we just add compost to the hole. Sometimes we'll use a organic fertilizer mixed in with the compost. But it helps out a lot, and we've had good success, last year doing it by the hole versus the entire row. And something else we're doing that in the past we did not do instead of pulling these plants out, we cut them off at ground level and leave the roots, so that will decompose and create more organic matter. And we were getting away from using the plastic, and we tried last summer to not use anything on the rows just to give it a break, and weeds were just rampant. So we went back with the plastic, but now in the spring we will actually use the weed cloth on the road, because it does allow, it allows air and doesn't kill as many things under there as the plastic does. Yes, that's how these rows came to be. And again, we will, at the end of the season, we'll take the plastic up, we'll cut these off, take the plastic up, and go back down with weed cloth for the next planting. And I'm trying to get away from, because we have 4 farms at 4 different locations, a lot of times we'll pull things out of this tunnel or cut it off, and then we move on to the next farm before we plant. So at times there'll be months in between. We're trying to get away from that and get to where as soon as this plant comes out, something goes in, to keep it always, covered, not bare.
Gotcha.
Now we did.
Thanks, Kara. So when we have Q&A, because Daphne is not with us today, I'll do my best to answer those questions, since we've been working with them for years. But we do have our Food Systems Choctaw Fresh Fellow with us, Tamika Bell, and she will be answering questions on where that food goes. So I'll turn it over to Justin Morris at this time. Justin.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I had some other conversation going on in the background, Felicia, when you were speaking, so my apologies.
No worries. If you can introduce yourself and briefly talk about your video that's coming up, and Kara will cue it up. Did we lose him, Kara?
I think we might have. I can't hear him, so I'll just go ahead and start playing the video. And Justin Morris is a livestock grazing specialist with NCAT, and he created a short 10-minute video showing you how to look at your own soil health by using a couple different indicators and digging up some soil. And he's going to show you how to look at different factors and see how the soil health is. So I'll go ahead and start with that. Whoops, I'm not sure. 1 second.
I'm back.
Oh, hello, Justin.
Yes.
Go ahead and start the video. But do you have anything else you want to say?
Just that we're going to be showing about a 10-minute long video here that talks about assessing soil health on grazing lands. My apologies for the wind noise, kind of unavoidable down here in Southeast Idaho. Kind of like up there where Linda and Dale and Janet are at, the wind seems to always blow. So hopefully you'll still be able to hear my voice over the wind there a little bit. But yeah, we can go ahead and roll the video. Grazing specialist with the National Center for Appropriate Technology. I'm based in Southeast Idaho. And today what we're going to be discussing is a little bit on different soil health indicators, how we can assess those out on grazing lands. So whether we're on pasture land, like as we are here, or on upland range, we wanted to be able to have a little discussion on what we can be looking for in assessing soil health. So let's go ahead and get to that. Assessing soil health does not have to be complicated one bit. So really the goal of what we're doing today is just using very simple tools like a shovel, and also like a pocket knife. Pocket knife can also be very valuable in figuring out, once you do a little bit of digging, being able to see the face of the hole that you just dug. So we're just going to use these two tools. So one of the things that I like to do when I first come out to an area to assess soil health is first looking at the above ground vegetation, so everything above the soil surface. But the thing that I'm probably the most interested in is what's going on right at the ground surface level. And what we want to be able to see is, number one, do we have residue covering the soil surface? Fantastic if we do, not such a good thing if we don't have any residue. So on this residue here, we can actually see this residue starting to break down. And you can see it's very brown, it's got kind of a spongy feel to it, but it is actually, as I dig down into here, it is actually starting to get worked in to the soil profile, and that's really thanks to the life that we have here going on in the soil. One of the things that I found out here earlier today, when I was going through, looking through the grass here and looking at the residue, is I have been able to find some evidence of earthworm activity. The castings, which is the manure from the earthworms, and if you dig down in here, sometimes you can find these small little very round balls that are super soft, and that is generally earthworm castings, and that's an evidence that we have earthworm population here, which we do. Now right where I'm at, I don't see any earthworm castings, but I was over in other areas of the pasture here and I did find some. But really we want to see this residue starting to be worked in. Now if we have residue out here that is turned gray, then that's not such a good thing. Generally, for whether we're talking cropland or pasture, we want our residue to basically be recycled every single year. So we don't want residue hanging around really longer than a year, because we want that to actually be incorporated into the soil profile. So right now what we're seeing, folks, is for the most part our roots here, okay, I did bring along a little tape measure here, but our roots pretty much going down about 7 inches or so, and then you hit this really this high clay content area that's very difficult for roots to get through. So we really only have roots going down here about 6-7 inches, and then we're hitting some really hard stuff. So one thing that I use to kind of test for compaction is you can still take your knife, and what I like to do is I like to come in on the side of it and push in, and then come down about every inch or so as I'm going down, and I just feel the relative resistance that it takes for me to push the knife in on the side. Sometimes it's hard to be able to see the structure of the soil on the side of the pit, like of the hole there like that. So what I like to do is pop out a piece, and then I can kind of look for evidence of compaction up on top. Now usually what you'll generally see is you'll see like these planes, this kind of stratification layers when you pull these out, and we're kind of seeing a little bit of that here where you're seeing these planes break out, where you can see some horizontal lines. I'm going to take this and break it in half so we can kind of see the inside of it a little bit. Okay. Now this structure here, actually we've got a little bit of a crumbly structure going on here, but I'm also noticing here that most of my roots are not really well covered in a nice soil film. A lot of the roots are coming out very white, and that also is an indicator right there. You might have heard the term rhizophagy, and that is actually where the plant is actually taking in microbes and actually harvesting microbes and pulling their nutrients off and spitting them back out. And one of the evidences of rhizophagy is you get like these essentially like dreadlocks clinging to all the roots. It's phenomenal what it really looks like. We don't really have that here, unfortunately. Most of these roots are coming out pretty clean. So that means there's a lot of room for improvement. Another thing that we can do is we can smell the soil. So the soil does have a good earthy smell to it. It doesn't smell metallic or anything. So that is a good indicator. For the most part here though, is, you know, we do have a little bit of decent structure up here, but as we take them apart, and then as I kind of shake the soil off, you know, we got a lot of fibrous roots up here. Okay, these roots are coming out pretty clean. Not a lot of soil's really sticking to them. So that means there's, you know, we can improve this still quite a bit. And that's going to come down to our grazing management where we can make those improvements. So here what I did is I took out a slice from each of the two pits that I was looking at earlier, so that you can kind of see the differences between the two. And that's kind of helpful when you're assessing soil health on your own place. You know, you could go and dig in your pasture, find a representative area, and then go along the fence line or some other area that maybe animals can't get to, so that you can just kind of compare and contrast the differences to see what's going on. So here is represents our area of the pasture that is periodically overgrazed. So you can see you don't really have a crumbly structure up here in the surface. And when you look at this one over here, this is far more crumbly up at the top. So that means we've got a lot more life going on right here to help to create that texture. But one thing I'm noticing here too, and it may not be as evident on camera as it is in person, but I can noticeably tell that there's a lighter color to this than there is to this. So what is that telling us right there? Well, the lighter color would be analogous. If we were to go out here and pull a soil carbon sample, we would probably have less soil carbon here than we would in this one. So that darker color is going to generally be an indicator of a higher soil carbon content. And that comes from having more life, more plant life on that soil surface that's going to be pumping those sugars down into the soil. So I noticed when trying to take out the slice for this, really hard to get this thing out. And that's because we got some compaction here just at the soil surface, because we don't have that armor, we don't have that residue to help shield raindrop impact. We also don't have as many green growing plants to help with the aggregation process. So there we go, folks. There is some indicators starting at the soil surface. Start at the top and work your way down. You don't have to dig to China to see everything. You don't need to get a backhoe out. You can do it with a plain old shovel and a pocket knife.
Okay. Yes, I'm Daphne.
All right, thanks, Justin. I'm going to go ahead and introduce the next producer, which is Tim Miller. And Tim is joining us, as I said earlier, from Kyle, Texas. He owns a farm there called the Millburg Farm, and it's just south of Austin. And he has been certified organic since 1989. And it's a 5-acre farm that is pretty much a one-man operation. And so for 30 years, he's used dry land farming techniques to provide one of the oldest CSAs in Texas, in the state of Texas. And he uses hardy heirloom varieties to minimize his water needs, as well as timing his plantings to the weather. And specifically, he uses trench composting and collects water. So in this video, Tim's going to show us how he trench composts with wood chips, and that helps maintain the fertility of his dryland vegetable and fruit farm. And it also captures and stores moisture in the soil for his crops to grow year round. So I'll go ahead and show the video of Tim now.
To give you a little bit more idea about my farm, 31 years certified organic. I don't pump water from the aquifer, so I'm basically a dryland vegetable farmer, but also with bringing in rainwater. So I use about 6,000 gallons of saved rainwater and apply that water very specifically to plants. A way that I saw that we could add more moisture into the farm is utilizing wood chips. Working for a tree company in 1984 in Austin, we dropped them off at the community gardens. And at the community gardens, I ended up working there for 9 years. Started utilizing trenches and backfilling with wood chips, because I just dug here. If we can kind of see the different colorings, this is moisture that's deep into the ground. This is about almost a foot of wood chips. And so what my plan is I'm gonna run the tiller what I like to call down and back. I'm gonna go down this row, hit it one direction, and then I'll come back, and then this looser material, I'll scoop it up and add that to there. I'll still have lots of organic matter of wood chips in here, but these wood chips have been sitting here for almost 2 years now. So they should till up real nicely. What I've noticed in my farm, we have black clay soil. The weeds are almost non-existent into wood chips. They do grow, all right, Bermuda grows in wood chips, and so does Johnson grass, but they're easily pulled out of there. I think from a farmer's perspective, they make great walking material. They add so much organic matter into the soil. Having the loss of nitrogen deficiency from off of your greens, I don't see it. Have never seen that. I've grown great celery out here, dryland celery, and great results.
Talk a little bit about the Johnson grass and how you use the Johnson grass and even the Bermuda grass to a certain degree to put back into the fields as well as organic matter.
Okay, the Johnson grass, which is a little bit behind me, that material will get weed-eated down and rake that, but I'll rake the Johnson grass and cut it before the seed heads are viable. And then I'll add that to the trench, and then I can put my old okra stalks, tomato stalks into here. The Bermuda is a different enemy or ally. I think of it as an ally. It keeps on coming back. There's almost 2 types of root systems on Bermuda. There's a dark colored root system, which is really the parent plant, and then you have the lighter, whiter stem, which does a lot of runners, and that's usually that first year's growth. So if you're attacking it just to remove the organic green matter, the new material, and incorporating that on a nice hot sunny day, you're gonna kill that, and then I'll let that air dry and then add that back into my trench.
Excellent.
So I'm heating it up. Basically, I can heat up my trench by applying green material. You know, why would I want to heat up this trench? I mean, this is a static compost pile, but in some cases, I want to heat this material up because I want to do maybe beans, 1 row of beans alongside this trench. I would rather do it closer to the grasses on that side, because the grasses are going to give me a little winter wind protection, and there's actually a trench right over there too, but those grasses are growing in there, and that is going to give me the heat effect, all right, from our northwest winds blowing this way. The better place for beans in this kind of setup would be right on this edge, so that a freeze comes. I have some devices that I would hold the plant from being crushed by a row cover crop. run the tiller over this trench, take my row cover and quickly cover the trench and the beans. And now I have beans for Thanksgiving. So it gets real tricky on logistics of everything, on incorporating trench composting, but it is definitely a proven method. I mean, this works for me, and I think I have it streamlined at my place. Trench material nicely loosened up, Johnson grass. And now you start to see remnants of this at the bottom of the trench. This was sunflowers.
So when he dug the trench, he lays down the sunflower stalks.
When I dug the trench, yes.
Yeah.
Just to hold the walls in place, all right? And the trench stays always in place. It's not going to get removed. The other aspect is, because we live in central Texas, we can get a hurricane. All right, 2 years ago, we had 17 inches of rain. All right, so it is extremely important. I have close to 1.5 miles of trenches dug. They're all backfilled with wood chips. All right, so when the water comes off of the property into these terraces, they can come down into this trench because I can dam it off just right over here. All of the wood chips suck it up as moisture, and then I can use that material later into the course of the year because it has moisture laden compost.
Absolutely, yes.
But if we get too much rain, then this trench could get uncovered totally. Throw it up on side here, and then I can run all of this water that gets trapped behind you, flows all the way down to the sunflower at the end, take a left, and go now down into further trenches. I can take water from up by my barn and move it all the way to the back of my field. Every 3 feet is I'll do 2 scoopfuls of compost there, and then rough this back over again so it lays flat.
So you don't even really have to put that much back onto the bed.
No.
Yeah.
No. This is an extremely important amount of wood chips that I can utilize when the squashes are up about 1 foot tall, active, about 3 feet, growing, vining. Then I can apply some more wood chip compost to them as well as coming in and sifting some material out of here and using this into my potting operation. All right, instead of just having a 5 foot tall pile. It doesn't work on a small scale setup. This works far simpler for a small scale farmer.
Over the last 10 years.
All right. Thank you, Tim. We will be coming to you for questions here in a minute. I'm going to introduce the next producer that I'm going to show a video, and I had the opportunity to be with Chris Groterget this week up in the Panhandle. He is in a town called Hereford, Texas, which is, like I said, located in the Texas Panhandle. And it has a very rich agricultural history there that's fueled by the waters of the Ogallala Aquifer. And that aquifer, as most of you know, has been in perilous decline for the past 100 years as more land has been converted into row crops and cattle feedlots. And so this decline is a very serious threat to the longevity of a lot of the producers in the Texas Panhandle. So ultimately, Dr. Chris Groterget is a veterinarian, a farmer, and a livestock man, and he's a cutting edge producer of organic crops and livestock. And Chris has a lot of Ogallala recharge playas on his property, and he sees these playas as vital recharge wetlands and has shifted his practices to protect the playas and the water future of his region. So he's found ways to do farming using as little water as possible to sustain his fields, and he's converting a lot of his farm back into native grasslands that support cattle. So let's see here, sorry.
So Groterget attempts to keep irrigation on his family's farmland in line with the rate of recharge, and he's an advocate for living within his water means, and he likens the playas on his farmland near Dawn to a farmer's best friend and a conduit to recharge of the Ogallala aquifer that makes life here sustainable. So by improving the ecology on his land, he's been able to turn the portion of the aquifer that underlies his property into a rechargeable resource. So I will go ahead and show, this is kind of a compilation of a podcast we did mixed in with pictures and a few videos as well. So I will go ahead and start that as well.
On this property. And granted, you have to realize that in the last 10 years, during the drought times, we do irrigate some crop. We do not irrigate crop to the same intensity that we did prior to 2010, 2011. Okay? And what our goal was to see if we could irrigate, if we could take the data that we knew that was discussed about, you know, from our water district and other water districts across the nation, and from some hydrology writings out there, and to see what our recharge rate really was. And so we took this very conservative stance of saying, okay, let's just guess that we recharge 10% of our annual rainfall. We are now having to take a look at it from a little different perspective of how we manage with less water. And by pumping less, what we learned is we learned to monitor our well recovery times. And essentially, we are in a county that most years the water table declines at least a foot a year, countywide, with areas that have 4 to 6 foot of decline in a year's time. Now, by planting a lot of grass and irrigating less and trying to irrigate to a recharge level, we've essentially, on our Ogallala strata of our water table, we've been able to hold it at a steady rate over 10 years. But during the dry years, when we're pumping more, we're going down. But we're finding that we're able to recover that during the wetter times. And so our net change is very close to zero over a 10-year period of time when properties around us continue to decline. And so the thinking was that it was kind of like a big bathtub of water, and that if my neighbor's wells go down, well, then mine must go down. And what we're learning, that's not necessarily the case, that our individual impact on, particularly if you have a reasonable enough land mass, or think in terms of large recharge fields or large well fields, that we can have impacts by changing our operation and trying to maximize the water going into the soil, in the water going and maximizing the water that goes into the playas to get it to go into the aquifer. So not scientifically proven goal, but in general terms, this is pretty much our goal, is that we keep 90% of the water that falls on the earth, that 90% of that goes into the soil and is stored rapidly at the time of the rainfall event. We know that we cannot capture 100% of it. We know that 10% of that will, somewhere in that 10% neighborhood, if we're doing a really good job, will run off to the playa lake. And we hope that we capture 100% of that 10% that goes into the playas for recharge. So that's kind of the way we're looking at it. We're very blessed here that we have an aquifer that takes the water off the surface and away from the wind and evaporation. The big problem here is that we've been culturally and economically, our region has overutilized our skill at pumping the water out. And so the ultimate problem is we're trying to produce more crop for the given amount of water there. And a lot of that probably came from the mindset that, if we don't get it, someone else will, and it doesn't recharge anyway. So it's okay. The problem with that is that it fails to recognize the need of future generations of people in the region, many of which might be our family members.
All right. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and open up to questions. We're going to start by asking the producers, Tim, Chris, Tomika, and Janet and Dell, one question to get started, and then we'll be taking questions in the chat box. So the first question that I would like to start with, and Tim, I'll go ahead and start with you. What advice, and we'll ask the same question for each producer, so listen carefully, and then each can go around and ask, but what advice do you have for other producers enduring the transition from traditional farming and ranching practices to soil sponge regeneration? What would be the most pertinent piece of advice you could give to the people on the line listening?
Ooh, I like that question. I would say you need to observe the water flow on heavy rain events on your piece of property. I did that by having a 20-foot pile of sycamore leaves on the highest point of our property. Now, we're on 5 acres. And so when a 10-inch rain came, sycamore leaves cup upwards so they float. And that whole pile of leaves floated all out into the field alongside what were terraces in 1991. And when the water receded, that marked the high water marks in the property, which also became my trenches. I knew I couldn't grow in wet areas in this situation. So as a gardener farmer, then I dug all my trenches back in 1991. Nothing has changed since, other than adding more and more wood chips into the property. So just the simple observation of how that water works.
That's a great piece of advice. And I guess maybe in other places, people could use cottonwood leaves. I think cottonwood leaves might do the same thing. I'm not sure. Maple leaves. That's great advice. Thank you. Tomika, can you share with us what advice you would give?
Hey, I mostly don't deal with I guess the outside. I'm mostly the in-house, but our method is, we're trying to preserve our land here, ancestral land. So by doing so, like Daphne said, a no-tilling method. We don't try to disturb our ancestral land, and we do a drip irrigation process. So that's how we kind of are able to expand from 11 tunnels to soon 16 tunnels. That's the way we go about it.
So maybe one other question, maybe I could rephrase the question for you, Tomika. So maybe from a social perspective, when people are enduring this transition, are there any social components that you've had to deal with and in terms of making this transition that you can share about?
As to
when you're making the transition from maybe doing more traditional farming into more regenerative ways, is there any, social issues that have come up that you've had to deal with that that you have any advice to give on?
I don't think we have. Everyone's very supportive. Our target is tribal members, so it's a way of means how we are reverting back to the way we used to farm and care for our community. So we haven't had that problem. Stigma. Yeah, we're removing the stigma, actually.
That's great. Actually, Tomika, can you talk a little bit about how you're doing that? I mean, what you're offering to the community?
Yeah, well, we are partnered up. We kind of revert back to our elderlies. We feel like here in Mississippi, Chocaw, Mississippi, we feel like our elders are basically someone that we learn from, our teachers, and our elders are sacred to us. So we take advice from them. We move younger children want to farm. We kind of partner with elderly schools, programs, as a way of changing the diabetes ratio, kind of taking that down. So I've been here for only maybe a year. That's what I've seen so far that we're geared toward doing.
Awesome. That's great. Okay, Chris Groterget, what advice do you have for other producers during the transition from traditional farming and ranching to regenerating your soil sponge?
In our, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
In our movement, or the way we look at it, the way I would suggest it if someone called us or we met them in a meeting, would be to start somewhere. Now, in the model that we've gone down the road, we've chosen to go down. We basically just went back to native plants to cause our soil sponge to recreate itself, and learning to farm within those native grass communities. I think it kind of automatically creates its own soil sponge over time, and keeping plenty of roots in the ground to allow that to happen. I think, you know, we're pretty much in our dry climate, tillage is a pretty big long-term negative of any kind. And so when the wetter parts of the country where their soil recovers much quicker, they have some advantages as far as if they wanted to incorporate tillage, it's going to have less negative impact than it would in our environment. And so, and if they're in the drier West, certainly keeping roots in the ground, keeping it covered, eliminating or minimizing tillage, that's kind of paramount in those drier climates.
Great, thank you. Dale and Janet. Do we have Dale and Janet?
Dale. There you go. You're muted again.
Sorry.
Now you're good.
Okay. Thank you. I think in our situation that we are in a perennial native range type. I think that's very important to keep, but I think that the key would be to intensify our grazing management so that we would have our residual put back into the soil as quickly as possible. And I guess that's where I would like to comment that both Tim and Chris have done some wonderful, well, everybody on the video has done some wonderful work, but I was quite taken with all Tim's work.
Thank you. Okay. Janet, did you have anything to add to that?
Don't be afraid to learn, talk to people, and get on the computer, learn things, and start small if you have to. Just start and get your hands in the dirt. It's kind of fun.
Great. Okay, so we have a question here. We have a couple of questions from the audience. One is for Tim. And Tim, the question is, do you use cisterns and water catchments with your trenches, or maybe hugel culture to set up water to soak up water to, sorry, this is written kind of funny, to soak up water and irrigate with it later?
No, currently I don't add water to my trenches. All right. It's amazing. I know that video when Kara came out, there was moisture deep down. We were also in a time period where we hadn't had a rain for about 40 days. So it was a very dry time period when Kara took that video. The hugel culture, I have a number of them stationed around the property. from a visual standpoint, there are some established beds that you can only see from the air. The front yard is designed to be an Indian face, only seen from the air, and that has hugelkultur beds set up. And it's just an amazing thing that I did to incorporate artwork into a farm, but also having it functional as well. I don't like wasting rainwater. I work hard to do that. I have some prototype ones, mobile rainwater roofs on bicycle tires. You can roll these out to the ends of beds and water. Now, some of these other growers who are cattle raisers, I'm on 5 acres. All right, I realize, 50,000 acre farm, this is impractical to do to, but it can be done. I think an overall one little aspect is our storms that we have, tornadoes or hurricanes, and the devastation those cause, and the woods, all the trees that get chipped up. How can we as a society put those to better use somewhere into areas? And I saw it a long time ago, and I utilize those wood chips very efficiently and hand water literally 11 acres of farmland. Hand water 5 acres and 6 more acres adjacent to me.
Yeah, so Tim has set up little roofs, old roofs he's laid around the property, and he collects water on the edges of those and then dips his water bottles in there, and then just really small amounts of water he showed me that he uses, which is really cool. He just puts a little on there, and the wood chips hold so much that he just doesn't need that much. So, okay, thanks, Tim. The next question is for Chris. How do you go back to native plants? Do you seed or provide the environment in which they will come back?
We actually do both. We've played with both. Fortunately, in our region, there are some producers, some seed companies that produce native seeds and have for years, for reclamation and for trying to get pasture mixes right and things like that. So first of all, we had areas of native grass already, areas of our property that had never been disturbed, other than disturbed by grazing. And so we had a little local niche of some, but some of these properties have been farmed with tillage for over 100 years. And so our seed bank, what we found, was getting pretty low, or extremely low in some places. So we started off by buying seed and planting it with a no-till grass drill. That's what we started off with. But as we've gone and we've got our regional seed bank higher, we've actually moved away from that. We still do some of that, but we have seen that some areas are starting to show up with grass just by not tilling it anymore and grazing it and mowing it as needed. And mowing is more of a cultural thing to keep the neighbors happy than it is necessary from an essential action of getting grass established.
I think Dale and Janet have quite a bit of really good news about just being able to use grazing to shift plant species composition. Do you want to tell us about that?
We've rotational grazed for about 40 years, and what we've seen is we've been able to increase litter, and we have an upward trend in our desirable plant species. I guess the biggest segment that we've seen an improvement on would be with our warm season grasses, that we've had a large increases in those as a percentage of our overall biomass.
You're so humble. So you start out with bare ground, and you get a bunch of Japanese brome, and you turn it into beautiful prairie sandreed and wild roses and all sorts of wonderful wildlife habitat. And I was told that that was impossible by some other folks. So I just kind of love to tell the story to give people hope that people might say things are impossible, and you might find out that they're not.
Let's see. Felicia, do you want to, I know that you had some information that you wanted to ask Tamika.
Yes, thank you. I put it in the chat to just kind of cue Tamika on. So let me find it. So I wanted Tamika to talk about a lot of the, like you said, social programs that the food from Chocaw Fresh go into and help with the tribal members. So Tamika, could you explain briefly about the farm and the youth, how that's being utilized working with the children, the honor system in the tribal business offices, if you know anything about the kitchen, I could talk on that if you don't, but the kitchen to assist with healthy meals, and then the mobile unit.
Yeah, sure. As far as the farming and youth, we try to make sure we partner up with the school programs, and there's a lot of youth programs out here on the reservation that gears toward eventually the kids moving up to maybe possibility having some interest in agricultural field. And there is a youth opportunity program out here where they start off at maybe, I think, 15 or 16 years old, all the way till they're maybe 24, to have the opportunity to work anywhere that they like. But also we have some that actually works with us. I had the pleasure of being able to work with one over the past summer. And it's almost like we're training them on the field out here, what they need to do to provide to the elders, the programs, and the schools. And at one point we were with a farm to school grant where we were allowed, the statistics here with diabetes was so high with our high schoolers and middle school. So by targeting that, we ended up partnering up with all 8 communities, tribal schools, and providing to them. We did like a summer feeding program, and also throughout the school year, we provided those fresh veggies as well to their menu. And as far as the honor system for the tribal businesses, we finally worked together with the tribal chief and the councils during this COVID, and we were able to provide almost, what, 1,400? I have my coworker here, she knows her numbers. About 1,400 pounds of produce to all of our tribal communities. And we also take care of the cafeteria for our 2 casinos out here. And all the programs, elderly, TSA, we do elderly TSA. We just partnered up on a grant with our food distribution over here. And also we partner with our hospitals. So we try to target everyone that we can to make, because we do not, our numbers are so high, and mostly our goal is targeting mostly Native Americans, but specifically to Miss Savannah Choctaw Indians.
Awesome. That's really phenomenal work. Thank you. So I think a question that Chris had, and I'll just go ahead and open this up to anybody. So if you have an answer, you can unmute yourself. Chris was wondering, has anyone needed a keyline plow or something like it, a subsoil ripper, to get biological activity going on bare dead ground? Any experience with that? I can speak to a couple of people that I work with here in Central Texas who have used that. They, not necessarily a keyline plow, but just subsoil ripping. And there was a couple different results that were experienced. On one, they did it in a really, really poor pasture, and then they did it in a pasture that was a little further along in its rehabilitation process. And they actually saw greater results with within the pasture that was in a little bit better shape. They saw more water. They got a SARE grant and they did research on it, and they saw that there was more water infiltration in the pasture that was already a little bit further along than the one that was completely bare ground. So that's one piece of one story. And I could probably put you in touch with those people, Chris, if you wanted to chat with them. Well, we are coming down on the line for our time today. And it looks like we've got most of the questions answered. Linda or Felicia, do you guys, or Justin, do any of y'all have anything else you would like to just talk about today?
Just one thing, Kara, I wanted to add just briefly is that kitchen that I mentioned that's on the actual reservation there, and Tamika can help me if I'm wrong, but I just remember a lady that was employed there, and she created recipes to assist tribal members in learning how to, eat healthy and making a whole meal plan and so forth, which is very, helpful with chronic diseases. So that was the purpose of that kitchen being on the reservation. So just wanted to add that because that's a pretty nice thing. And then that mobile unit is on the reservation and people are able to come up to it, basically like a farmer's market on the reservation. Thank you.
That's awesome. Very cool. And if you all would like to share your email addresses, Chris, Tim, Tamika, please put them in the chat, Chris, if y'all are willing to receive questions and you want to add those to the chat, please go ahead and do that. Okay, Justin, Linda, anything else to share before we go into our closing? No, okay. Well, then we really thank you guys for listening, and we hope you're walking away with a few things today. I know these are a lot of different stories, but you can see that the Soil for Water program is really working within the realm of helping people understand how to regenerate their soil sponge. And these are all good examples of that today. We would like to invite y'all to explore the Soil for Water website. What's up there right now is great, but come back mid-November, we're going to have a fully revamped website. We're also going to be launching our forum, and that forum is going to be a place where all producers can go, media folks, they can go onto the forum. You can just read the forum if you'd like, but if you want to participate in the forum, you can sign up as a member and basically participate by responding to people's questions or stories that they post on there. You can post pictures and different things like that. So that'll be launched soon, and we're really excited about that. We also have a peer-to-peer network, and right now it has just been for livestock producers. But come November, we will be opening that up to the nation as well. And we will be featuring stories of those members and what they do and how they regenerate their soil sponge and capture and hold more rainwater in the soil. So please look for that. And everything that we do for the most part is free. It's all free to participate, and it's all voluntary. And ultimately, every once in a while, you might have to pay a fee to come to one of our workshops. Usually that includes a meal though, so you get something out of it too, besides great information. But ultimately, we do offer all of this for free of charge. We offer technical assistance on all kinds of topics. You've heard Justin's expertise today in his soil video, and we have lots of other people like Justin, myself, Felicia, Linda, and many, many others who are all knowledgeable in various specific types of farming and ranching, who can definitely help get your questions answered. And so keep your eye out on our website for our events that we have coming up. You can sign up for our newsletter, which will feature producers as well as tell you about events that we have coming up. And so please go on and check out what we have going on our website. And I'm going to turn it over to Linda for one last comment. But thank you very much. Thanks to Quivira, and thank you to all our producers for joining us today.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what Kara said. We're so grateful to be part of this conference. The Quivira conference to me is one of the most inspiring things that ever happens. I just have for years been enamored of the way things happen at Quivira, and to be part of it when you add in the American Grass-Fed Association and HMI as well, it's really a good thing. We are, as Kara said, we're so excited to be going nationwide and to be opening the doors, not just to ranchers, but also to farmers, gardeners, everyone. It's what we're trying to do in a lot of ways is practice the soil health principles of diversity and making sure that all the bases are covered. And I think as we get more people to come into the network and chime in on that forum, I think we'll be able to help each other advance in a way that we never could if we didn't have the connection. So I do really encourage you to chime in. Quivira Coalition is famous for early adopters and people who are pioneers. And if you get in on the forum and into the network and, in this year, you will be part of the pioneers for Soil for Water, and we'd love to see you there. So thank you so much for your time and attention, and hope to see you at Soil for Water.